The storm didn't come with a warning. It came with a sound, low at first, like distant drums rolling across the jungle canopy. Then came the wind, howling through the alien flora like a predator exhaling rage. In the Delta training grounds of Cornax 4, chaos began with a single snapped comm pole and a panic scream. Cadet Drinkser's wings flailed as he scrambled out of his tent. Atmospheric anomaly. Unpredicted hydrosurge, he squawked, feathers plastered to his angular face. The others began pouring into the open, insectoids clicking in distress, reptilians slipping in the rising muck, aquatic cadets wheezing in the suddenly torrential downpour. Jackson Reeve was already soaked to the bone, his canvas bedroll now a soggy mess beneath his feet. He stepped outside, blinking against sheets of water as the alien cadets devolved into blind disorder. "Where's command?" someone shouted, voice high and desperate. "Emergency drones offline," someone else answered, gesturing at a shattered terminal flickering under 2 inches of water. Jackson ducked as a broken canopy beam swung past his head. "Okay," he muttered. So much for day 5 of cooperative survival training. He shielded his eyes and scanned the camp, mentally mapping where the supply crates had been secured. One was already bobbing away down what had been a dry ravine yesterday. To his left, Zernix, the rigid, analytical cadet leader, stood statue still, multifaceted eyes blinking as his neural calculus failed to produce results quickly enough. The probability models didn't indicate. This level of flooding is statistically. "It's happening," Jackson snapped, pushing past him. "Forget the models. We need to move now." Zernix didn't answer. Talavish slumped near the commissary tent, her shimmering skin turning dull. A gill-based species, she was built for brine, not the freshwater torrents now engulfing the lower training site. She curled against a crate, struggling to breathe. Jackson crouched beside her. "Hey," he said gently. "Stay with me. You're gonna be okay." She nodded once, dazed. Water swirled around Jackson's boots. It had risen almost to his knees in under 5 minutes. "Everyone listen up," he shouted over the roaring wind. No one did. The alien cadets were too panicked, too scattered, every instinct geared toward individual survival. Jackson bit down on a curse. A chunk of the mess hall platform tore free, crashing into a row of solar units. Sparks flew. Cadets screamed. Jackson didn't wait. He sprinted to where the remnants of the gear depot floated and began yanking tarps, broken poles, and crates out of the mire. "Help me," he barked at the nearest cadet, a timid, gelatinous thing named Plurv, with translucent limbs and eyes like dark grapes. Plurv blinked, then looked away. "I said help me. Now." Plurv hesitated, then oozed forward, assisting Jackson in dragging a wide crate onto a semi-stable stack of others. Jackson ripped strips from a nylon sleeping roll, tying beams together in a rough lattice. The raft would be crude, ugly, but functional. "Why are you doing that?" Drinkser hovered uncertainly nearby, wings trembling with exhaustion. "Because we're about to be underwater," Jackson said. "This is gonna float better than your ego." Drinkser puffed his feathers in protest. "But that's not regulation." "Neither is drowning," Jackson shot back. "If you can flap, you can fetch cables. Go." To his own surprise, Drinkser obeyed. Another tremor passed through the ground as the river finally breached its banks, sweeping through the camp with renewed force. Cadets screamed again. More were trapped on isolated ridges of stone and overturned storage pods. If they weren't reached soon, they'd be swept away. Jackson tied the last cord in place and gave the raft a solid kick. It bobbed, listing slightly, but holding. He turned to Zernix, still frozen in computational paralysis. "Hey, I need data, current speed, depth estimates, flow direction. Can you give me that?" Zernix's eyes flicked. Yes. Yes. Vector alignment suggests southward surge. Speed increasing. Average depth at your position, 90 centimeters and rising. Perfect. Jackson grinned despite the cold water trickling down his spine. "You're now the navigation officer." Zernix tilted his head. "But I lack aquatic capabilities." "You don't need to swim," Jackson said. "You need to think. And think fast. Plurv handed over a length of synth fiber cord. Jackson used it to rig a paddle from a mess tray and a pole, then clambered onto the raft. It wobbled, groaned, but held. Reeve. Talavish croaked from her perch against the crate. Her eyes were unfocused. Can't breathe. I know, he said, paddling toward her. I'm getting you out of here. He slid the raft beside her and hauled her aboard with effort. She was heavier than she looked, dense musculature under that fluid form. Jackson wrapped her in a foil blanket and secured her in place.
Hang on.
We're going upstream first. There's a cluster of cadets on high ground. Drinkser watched from the edge of a rock, visibly torn between fear and awe. You're really going to try to reach all of them with that? Jackson looked back once.
No.
I'm going to succeed with this. Then he turned forward and paddled into the current, alone but determined, as a chorus of wind and rising water drowned out everything behind him. The raft cut slowly across the swirling flood, bobbing like a leaf in a storm, but Jackson's expression never wavered. Behind him, alien cadets began to watch, less with disbelief now, and more with a flicker of something unexpected.
Hope.
The raft scraped against a submerged tree trunk, jarring Jackson's arms as he drove the makeshift paddle through the current. Rain needled his face, and the wind hadn't let up for hours. Every movement was a gamble against balance, waterlogged weight, and fatigue. Behind him, Talavish huddled in the center of the raft, wrapped tight in foil and unconscious but breathing. The raft held, barely. A patchwork of salvaged crates, tied tarps, insulation cable, and desperation. It creaked and shifted with each turn. Still, it floated, which put it leagues ahead of anything else in camp. He maneuvered toward a cluster of jagged outcrops where a group of cadets had taken shelter. Their limbs waved frantically as he approached, 2 reptilian species, 1 quadrupedal mammal, and Zernix standing upright on a half-flooded comms panel, arms tight at his sides like he was enduring punishment. Hold still, Jackson called out, steering the raft close enough to wedge it between 2 rocks. We're doing this in twos. The reptilians clambered aboard without protest, claws scrambling for grip. Zernix hesitated. I can maintain stability here longer. I may be of greater value remotely. Jackson wiped rain from his eyes. We're not leaving you behind to calculate the angle of your own drowning. Zernix blinked, mandibles twitching. Then he stepped aboard with unnerving precision, seating himself between the crates like he'd plotted the physics beforehand. The raft dipped, took on a slosh of water, and held. Where's Drinkser? Jackson asked. The mammalian cadet, soaked and shivering, lifted a trembling paw. He flew toward the storage shelters. Said something about retrieving dry rations. Of course he did, Jackson muttered. The ride back to the higher ground was slow. Jackson's shoulders burned with the effort of fighting the current, but adrenaline dulled the fatigue. Each time the raft tilted too far, Zernix gave a quiet correction. Shift your center. Distribute mass starboard. It was odd how the coldest voice aboard had become a lifeline. As the raft touched back against the hilltop staging area, now a shrinking island of rocks and mud, Jackson leapt off and helped unload the cadets. Plurv and 2 others had gathered scrap debris into organized piles. It was an order, but it was a start. Jackson turned to Zernix. Start coordinating rescue zones. I need eyes on high ground. Find Drinkser, if he's still flapping around somewhere. Zernix's posture stiffened. Understood. Another bolt of lightning cracked overhead, revealing the grim outline of the camp's southern edge, what used to be the storage area. All that remained were floating crates and the skeleton of a supply rig. And a figure flailing. Drinkser, Jackson muttered, already pushing the raft back into the flood. The water was angrier now, the current twisting like it wanted to spin the raft apart. Jackson kept low, driving forward in short, brutal strokes. He spotted Drinkser clinging to a comms antenna, wings tangled in cable. Reeve, the avian screeched. I can't, my wings. Jackson surged forward, bumping the raft against the post. Hold still. I am holding still. The cable was too tight. Jackson crawled across the raft, then leapt onto the post, wrapping one arm around it as the wind hammered them both. He yanked his multi-tool from his soaked belt and sawed through the synthetic cord. Drinkser dropped like a stone into the raft. "Grab something," Jackson shouted, then jumped after him as the post was torn free by the current. They landed hard, the raft spinning in place. Drinkser coughed, looking around in stunned silence. "You came back," he said quietly. "I'm not in the habit of letting teammates drown, even feathered ones." The avian was silent for a beat. "Then, this raft, it shouldn't work. By all standard engineering metrics, it's held together with spit and trauma?"
"Yeah."
"Welcome to human engineering." They made it back just before dusk, though the term meant little under the churning gray sky. More cadets had arrived, some guided by Zernix's precise coordination, others following the sight of the raft as it became an anchor of hope. Jackson knelt beside Talavish, who stirred weakly and reached for his arm. "You came back," she murmured. "Always," he said. The cadets gathered around the raft now like it was a hearth fire. Alien faces, scaled, feathered, segmented, looked at him not with confusion or suspicion anymore, but with quiet admiration. Drinkser stood nearby, wings limp, his voice low. "Your methods are crude, inefficient, non-standard, but effective." Zernix clicked in agreement. Suboptimal tools employed with optimal intent. An intriguing paradox. Jackson looked between them, brow raised. "Was that your way of saying thank you?" Zernix blinked. "Yes." Drinkser coughed. "Also yes." He sat down on the raft, legs dangling over the side. The floodwaters still swirled below, but the sky had finally begun to lighten at the edges. Not clear skies, not yet, but the worst might have passed. Jackson glanced at the raft again. It was sagging. One of the cables had started to fray, and one of the crate lids had come loose. It wouldn't last forever, but it had lasted long enough. He exhaled slowly, watching steam rise from his skin in the chill air. "All right," he said, standing again. "We're not done. There are still more out there, and we're going to need a bigger raft." And as the alien cadets stepped forward, without hesitation this time, Jackson allowed himself a grin. For the first time, they weren't waiting for orders. They were waiting for him. By dawn, the floodwaters had reached their zenith. What remained of the training camp was a scattered graveyard of half-submerged shelters, tangled gear, and toppled comms towers. The alien jungle surrounding them had turned into an archipelago, tree canopies poking above the surface like islands in a muddy sea. The raft groaned under the weight of its new design. No longer a haphazard stack of crates, it now boasted a second platform layer, reinforced with insulation foam, solar panel frames, and the floor from a dismantled observation tent. A dozen hands or claws, tentacles, pseudopods had helped construct it. Jackson stood at the helm, water up to his calves, guiding the oversized vessel through the labyrinth of debris and broken memories. Behind him, Drinkser manned a makeshift rudder composed of 3 meal trays and a flagpole. Zernix remained perched in the center, cross-referencing terrain data on a salvaged navpad rigged to a solar charger. Every rescued cadet now served a function. Fear had morphed into cohesion. Survival had become teamwork. Their target was a final outpost to the northeast, marked as Zone 7B in training logs, a remote elevation where a group of cadets had last pinged their signal before their transmitter died. Zernix projected the path through a series of half-collapsed root bridges and fallen canopy branches. "Approximately 800 meters, assuming no further obstructions," he intoned. "There will be obstructions," Jackson muttered. "There always are." And there were. The current had grown more erratic. Entire trees floated sideways, dragged along by the surge like puppets cut loose. Twice, the raft was nearly capsized by submerged outcrops. Once, something large and finned brushed beneath the hull, too quick to see, too heavy to ignore. Cadet Plurv, oozing over a structural beam and acting as ballast, quivered. "We are not alone in the water." "Thanks, Plurv," Jackson said dryly. "Really helps morale." Drinkser fluttered his damp wings. It might be a scavenger fish. Or a swamp boar. Or, well, something with teeth. Let's just not fall in then, Jackson said. Sound good. They pressed forward. When they reached the remnants of a fallen tree that once bridged two hillsides, Jackson hopped off and hauled the raft through the narrowing gap using vines and raw muscle. Drinkser clutched the rudder, guiding its nose away from a jagged root cluster. The effort scraped his hands raw and left his arms trembling, but finally the raft surged forward into calmer waters. The hill that marked Zone 7B loomed ahead, barely recognizable, but still intact. At the top, clustered around a snapped beacon mast, were 5 cadets, waving frantically. They're alive, Jackson said, voice flat with relief. Drinkser hooped, nearly tipping the rudder. I knew it. I knew they'd hang on. Plurv pulsed with pride. This raft is statistically improbable. And yet, floating. Zernix didn't look up. Probability bends under applied determination. Jackson snorted. Is that your version of a compliment? I am still calculating. The raft scraped against the muddy slope, and Jackson was the first to leap off, boots sinking in the soft sludge. The stranded cadets were emaciated, dehydrated, but conscious. He helped them down one by one, easing them onto the raft with care. The last was a hulking crustacean with a shattered exoskeletal plate over one shoulder. He clicked his mandibles weakly. Didn't think anyone would come. Well, Jackson said, straining under his weight. Lucky for you. I'm very bad at leaving people behind. The cadet grunted. You're the human, right? Reeve. Yup. Thought humans were more theoretical. Usually we are. Until something breaks. As the raft pulled away from the hill, burdened now with over 20 cadets, the sky finally cracked open above. Not with more rain, but sunlight. Pale and unfamiliar, it streaked across the canopy and hit the water like a signal flare. Drinkser shielded his eyes. Is that it? Zernix glanced at his pad. Rainfall has ceased. Atmospheric pressure stabilizing. The storm has passed. A murmur spread through the raft. Relief. Fatigue. Something like awe. They drifted toward what remained of the original hilltop staging zone, now dry enough to land again. Cadets waited there, waving, organizing gear, setting up temporary shelters. Rescue beacons blinked faintly on repaired terminals. The emergency drone Jackson had thought destroyed now hovered weakly in place, rebooted and buzzing. Jackson stepped off first. His legs ached. His back throbbed. Every joint protested. But he smiled anyway. Drinkser landed beside him. They'll probably give you a commendation for this. Heroics. Innovation. Survival leadership under extreme duress. Jackson laughed. You think I did this for a medal? Zernix answered instead.
No.
But it will be recorded that you assumed command without designation. That your raft exceeded functionality expectations. That all projected casualty figures were surpassed in a positive direction. Jackson looked around at the soaked, weary cadets. They smiled back. Alien faces, yes, but faces that now trusted him without question. I didn't build a raft to impress anyone, he said. I built it because it needed to be built. Talavish stepped forward, steadier now. You saved all of us. And you did it without hesitation. Jackson shrugged. You would have done the same for me. Drinkser raised a feathered brow. We're cadets. Not commandos. Most of us froze. Or fled. You didn't. Jackson looked at the battered raft one last time, now leaning slightly to one side. Everyone freezes the first time. What matters is what you do when the panic passes. A pause. Then Zernix said softly, there is a phrase your species uses. Something regarding fire. And metal. Jackson smirked.
Yeah.
Trial by fire. Zernix nodded. We passed. And as the sun continued its slow rise over a broken world, the alien cadets, rescued, united, and changed, stood with their human teammate. Not as strangers from different planets, but as survivors forged in flood, bound by the raft they built together.